Welcome to Messy Disciples. We're so glad that you're here. My name is Pastor Bob. This is Gio, and we're excited for you to be a part of the conversation. And that's what these are. These are just conversations that started because Zoom became a way of life, and we thought what we were talking about might be something that could help people along the way.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Messy Disciples. We're really excited to be here today with you in the beginning of November 2020, right, Pastor Bob?
That's right. Yeah.
It's just been such a crazy time.
I can't believe it's November.
I can't either. And it's funny because November for me, Pastor Bob, has always been my favorite time of year. I love Christmas and I love celebrating Christ's birth a ton, but Thanksgiving holds a special place in my heart. It's always been a holiday for me that I've seen as one where all people can come together in America, and the purpose of the entire holiday is to give thanks. And any of you that have been watching us for a while know that thankfulness is a theme in our conversations here because it shows up so many times in the Bible. You know, the theme of being thankful and the theme of giving thanks and everything that kind of comes along with it is so prevalent in the scripture and in the word, and it's so applicable in life. So for me, Thanksgiving's always been a great time to be thankful, to really pause and remember and think about the things that are going on right now. And so Pastor Bob and I thought it might be fun to talk about what the Bible says about thankfulness and giving thanks. So did I do okay with explaining that one, Miss Pastor Bob?
You did great. One of the major themes of the Bible is thankfulness, and it can be seen in the Bible because God does something and we respond. And the number one response to when God is doing his work is thankfulness and praise. And so it's always the first move. I think of that great song that God's people sang after they passed through the Red Sea. Moses starts off this great song about how God has delivered them by a mighty salvation, the horse and the rider he has cast into the sea. I think of the book of Psalms, which the largest category of Psalms. It's competitive with lament, but also thanksgiving Psalms as well. And so it is a huge theme. David, who expresses thankfulness to God as the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle is moved from outside of the city of Jerusalem into Jerusalem, into the city where he exercises his dominion and reign. And so he dances wildly, so much so that his wife thinks that he's dancing inappropriately. And so he's just living this thankfulness and he's living this praise. I think of Hannah, who responds with a song of thanksgiving when God had granted her prayer and given her the son Samuel, who would be the one who would clean up the priesthood of Eli and Phinehas and Hophni, and her son would take away her shame and her reproach. And so just thankfulness and praise is all over the place. The people respond to Christ when he comes into Jerusalem, his triumphal entry, with loud shouts of Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. When the crowd saw Jesus perform the miracles, they were filled with thanksgiving that God had been, that he's doing this work amongst them. When they would hear Jesus's teaching and that he wasn't like the boring old preachers of his day, that people responded with thanksgiving and praise. After fear and shock at the resurrection, they responded with thankfulness and praise. I'm thinking of Thomas, who cries out, "My Lord and my God." Whenever God does something in the Bible, people respond. And one of the main ways that people respond is with praise and thanksgiving. So this, I think, was the theme of those early settlers in Plymouth in the 1620s, like 1621, when they had survived as long as they had, and they had received a harvest. They responded to God in thankfulness, and they didn't say, "Oh, thank God that you've saved us for ourselves," but instead they invited their neighbors, the tribe, the Wampanoag tribe of people, to join in that celebration of Thanksgiving with them. It was it was a harmony and it was a peace, that because there was a lot of fighting between the colonists who were colonizing in a somewhat negative kind of way, and then really also the colonists were escaping a negative situation. So they came from a negative situation. They were bringing a negative situation with them. They did a lot of negative things. But here at Thanksgiving, we see an example of the right thing to do, which is we're not going to fight. We're not going to see you as other. We're going to give thanks to God for what he's given us. And we're going to invite you to join in that celebration. And so the Feast of Thanksgiving is a really great time to invite people to give thanks with you for what God has done and giving you what you need.
Yeah, Pastor Bob, I think that I mean, you rifled off about 15 examples right there, right off the top.
sorry.
No, it's
Yeah.
okay. Right off the top. I mean, there's so many, it's apparent there's so many examples of Thanksgiving in the Bible. And so, when I hear you say this, it really is it brings my mind directly to the main stories in the Bible, and the reason that we need to stop and really be thankful for the things that we have been given by the Lord. And it's integral, right, in the process of prayer, for example. We have mentioned too in previous conversations, those that remember, I use the ACTS version of prayer, which has done really well for me and my family. And, the third one is the thankfulness. And, just that stopping, that moment to be able to stop every day in prayer. And then in this particular case, an entire holiday that is, centered around being thankful. How important is it from an emotional standpoint and a spiritual standpoint to be thankful for the thing? So I've been thinking about this, Pastor Bob, and in my family, we have a tradition, as I'm sure is not an uncommon one, at the dinner table on Thanksgiving, to go around and everybody, all kids included, everybody, describe some things that they are thankful for this year. And it really, some in the beginning we started doing it, the kids wouldn't take it seriously, but now they do, and they prepare for it now beforehand, and they think about it. Pastor Bob, the little things, like, you use some pretty big examples, Moses delivering them through the Red Sea, and, they sang a song of jubilation, and then in that way gave thanks. And that was one way. Singing and praising through song is one way to give thanks. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why we use it in our church services. What are other ways, Pastor Bob?
I think there's a really powerful thing we can do, especially this year. In all of those examples in the Bible, God had just delivered them from something, or they were in the midst of something really hard. And in the midst of all that, God brought them a moment of realization that he was there and he was there to save. And so they responded with thanksgiving and praise. This year, especially because of COVID, and especially because of the things that have been going on that have been systemic from COVID, this year especially, it's important to stop and to look around and to see what God has given you and what God has done for you in the midst of this difficult time, and to rightly give thanks to him. I think it's also a really powerful thing this year in Thanksgiving to have peace with those who you would think were your enemies, and to set all of the fighting down and to just be thankful for what God has given you. And so I'm sure this happens in every family, but sometimes in families they even fight about politics. This is that time of the year where politics doesn't come to the table, that we set all that down and we are simply just thankful to God for what he's given to us. We are no longer adversarial towards each other. And yeah, we're still going through it. And so is God's people. They were still going through difficult times, but they saw what God had done and they were thankful. So I think this year is especially good to return back to God thanks for what he had done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's very appropriate to, I don't know how many years to come people will watch this Thanksgiving series, but especially right now in 2020, amidst this barrage of what some would consider to be unbelievable, but they happen, so you got to believe it. Thank you, hashtag Matthew McConaughey and hashtag Greenlight. Greenlight's his new book, but he says in there, he says things should not, you should never say that something is unbelievable if it happened to believe it. And that's been our year. Our year has been a bunch of these unbelievable, quote unquote, hashtag unbelievable things. But I think you make a really important point, and I'm glad you made the point, especially this year, but in all years. I think the focus should be on Thanksgiving and eliminate politics from your conversation. It's going to be super difficult this year. And you know what? You might end up having a lot of family fights over something that really, in the end, you don't have as much control over as we are led to believe. So I think the focus on this day in particular, hopefully every day, but on this day in particular, should be on the many different things, in the many different ways that we can give thanks, and give thanks to the Lord, give thanks to each other for the kindness that we are able to give each other. Like you said, the one day we can set things apart and come together for the things. And I think that, I wish that, I'm happy that we're doing this now, Pastor Bob, because I wish that more of this could be infused into our conversations, because I do believe that at the root of a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, for anybody that's seen some of our past videos, really might be able to start being solved with the simple act of giving thanks.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And taking stock for what God has done for you. I think of that verse from the book of Psalms. I can't remember the exact, we'll have to Google it later, is God, you have brought us this far, and we thank you, is just the posture that I like to have. Everything's changing in November. It's getting colder. We're preparing for the holidays. We've just come from the craziness of this whole past year. We're wondering what lies ahead, and we've just got so much. And we're just going to choose as a people to take a moment and to stop and to give thanks. This year, Pastor Rousseau, Rev, he's going to be preaching on the lepers. Jesus heals the lepers. And I think that this is a good text. And if you can tune in on his sermon, I think you're going to like it. But here's an episode in the Gospel of Luke where Jesus he's heading towards Jerusalem. He's set his task. He's going to Jerusalem to fulfill all of the law and the prophets through his sacrificial death and glorious resurrection. So he's on his way. And as he's on his way, there's a group of 10 lepers who notice that he's coming down the road, and they cry out to him, hearing that it's Jesus. And they say, Lord, have mercy on us. Really what they're asking is that Jesus would save them. And Jesus declares them to be clean. And he says, go show yourself to the priests. Why? Because priests back in the Old Testament weren't just the guys who preached. They were actually also physicians. They were people who handled legal things. And so by him sending the lepers to the priests, he's saying, I want you to go get proof that you are cleansed. I don't want you to just have a private healing. I want this healing to serve as a witness to that God has visited his people to bring healing. And so it says this funny thing. It says, as they were going, they were cleansed. They were healed. And so
the trip, the actual trip of going there is what healed them.
Yeah. As they were on their way, they were being healed. And then this, it's powerful. It's great stuff. And then this thing happens when they all realize that they were being healed, or that they had been healed. Only one of them returns, and he was a foreigner, or rather, he was half Jewish and half Canaanite. And so it was a group of people that was really filled with a lot of disdain by God's people. They were called the Samaritans. And the Samaritans were people who were always on the outs with the Jewish people who lived around them. So much so that Jewish people didn't even go through Samaritan villages. They went around. And so there's a lot of hostility And if the New Testament was dinner theater, dinner theater where you boo and you hiss when the bad guys come in and you cheer
Right.
when the good guys come in, Samaritans would have been booed if it were dinner theater. Now, the person who comes back who had been healed, he was a Samaritan. And so Jesus praises this Samaritan. He says, listen, 10 were healed, but it's you who comes back. And it's you who does the right thing, which is gives thanks. And so I think that that story, which is one of just an uncountable amount of stories of what Jesus has done for people in their lives, is a good direction for us. God has given us Jesus. That's the main thing that we can be thankful for. And we could do well to learn from this Samaritan and to return that thanks back to Jesus, because he has delivered us. He has had mercy on us. And it doesn't mean that the other 9 were like awful sinners and that later, because they didn't return, that God had smote them again. Nope, that's not the point of the story. They received their healing. It was genuine. And he genuinely loved them. But we would do well to live by the example of the Samaritan who returns and to return thanks to God. Because everybody, Gio, everybody on the planet has received from God. But on Thanksgiving, we're like that Samaritan, and we stop and we say, and I will acknowledge, God, what you have done for me, and I will return thanks to you. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's a fantastic example of, I mean, listening to you talk about the Samaritans and the disdain and the dichotomy between the different peoples. It's so incredibly appropriate for what we're experiencing right now in America in November 2020. So I mean, it never ceases to amaze me, Pastor Bob, the similarities between what was then and what is now. It just goes to show that people don't change, and it also speaks very much to original sin and how, proof that we are all sinners. But hey, we've got a Thanksgiving series going. This is the first video. We're going to have other videos after this. So I think we can say, have a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Take that moment to be present with your family and friends, and however you are going to celebrate Thanksgiving this year. Pastor Bob left us with a really important point, and that is take the time this year to set aside differences. And even though Thanksgiving is an American holiday, it is always a religious Christian holiday, and a time for thanks is never better than at this time. So take the moments to do it, set aside your differences, and be thankful for God delivering us and about to deliver us, hopefully again, from yet another catastrophe known as COVID-19. Pastor Bob?
Hey, I just want to thank everybody. Yeah, check out the Thanksgiving series. Also, look at Luke 17, starting in verse 11, the story of the lepers. And I hope you can tune in for Thanksgiving Day and that you can listen to the sermon and check out more of the series. Click subscribe, hit notifications so you can see when those new videos come out. And if you leave comments, we're glad for that. And sorry if sometimes it takes us some time to get to the comments, but don't worry, we see them and it's good. Keep them rolling.
Yeah, keep the conversation going. You guys have been great at that. Thank you. Don't forget to check out Reverend Rosso's sermon this coming Thanksgiving.
Thanks for watching today. It's been a great conversation. We'd love for you to be a part of the conversation, so go ahead and click subscribe. And if you hit the notification bar, it'll let you know when new videos are coming out, which is really important because all of our videos are about new and current events that are happening. If you have any questions, go ahead and contact me via email. It's great to have you a part of the conversation. Thanks for joining us. Bye.